Hi, everybody. Welcome back to episode 2 of my start to finish of a hyper-realistic drawing process. In the last video, in episode 1, it was all of the setup, cleaning my drafting table, setting up the paper, putting the grid, and then just getting everything ready and nice and clean for the process of actually drawing. So in this episode, I'm going to go through my thoughts on how I take my photos for my next picture, my next project, and then what I do step by step from that point. So I'm not exactly sure what gave me the idea for this drawing exactly, but I just knew I wanted something kind of naturey. I didn't want to do a portrait. So something with wood and rocks, maybe flowers. So I kind of played around with some different ideas and then came up with this one that I'm going to do now. And as you can see there, you don't really need a fancy setup to take your reference photos. You can really have a pretty basic setup and get some nice pictures done. And then you just use Photoshop to kind of piece everything together. As long as you have a table and some lighting and a camera, you can take your own photos and have it turn out really nice. So here what I'm doing is I used Photoshop to kind of put everything together. I had my reference image and then I cut out each piece and then just laid them on top of each other. Combine them, and that's how I set up my whole piece. And then here I'm just doing the grid, so just 1 inch by 1 inch. I set up in Photoshop to make sure that the dimensions of the entire canvas was going to be the same dimensions as my drawing itself. So here I have it set for 22 by 28 inches at I think like 150 or 200 pixels per inch, just so that it's nice and sharp when I zoom in for drawing. And then I'm just numbering all of my grid outline 1 to 28 from bottom to top, and then 1 to 22 from left to right. I actually forgot to film this part, but what I did on my reference photo is I also numbered certain key spots on the drawing. So it would be like inch or square 3 horizontal, square 2 vertical, and I would just put a 3 and a 2 in that square, almost like you're doing connect the dots kind of thing, just so that I have key reference points that are next to areas of importance. So whether that's like moving along the side of the tree stump or on the top of one certain part of the rock. So what I'm doing is I mark them out on my reference, and then I'm again marking them out on my actual paper. So I usually have, maybe 10 to 20 of those on a smaller piece. On this one, I think I maybe have 15, but on a larger piece, like a big portrait, that's a 30 by 40 inch drawing, I might have 40 or 50 of those markers, just so that I can, it makes it a little bit easier getting the whole piece sketched out. And then once it's all numbered, then I'll move on to actually doing the sketch. And this is pretty important. You don't have to be extremely precise, for myself anyway. I don't find I have to be extremely precise, but I like to be as close as possible for the outline, just so that it makes it a little bit easier when I'm actually filling everything in. I'm not too far off. If I might be, an 1/8 of an inch off on one spot, or whatever, or I might have missed something, but it's easy enough to kind of notice it while I'm actually filling it in, now that I'm going to be putting more time into each, square inch. And you don't necessarily really want to rush through this. For this one, I think it maybe took me an hour to an hour and a half to sketch out my whole thing, get it all outlined, and making sure I have all of the key points. It just makes the whole process go a little bit faster when you get further into the drawing and you can kind of see how everything looks. But you definitely don't want to rush it. Some of my bigger ones, I would easily spend 2 to 3 hours just outlining everything, so that I know where the shadows are going, I know where the highlights are going, I have all of the main information around the eyes, or if it's an animal, I will sketch out the direction of the fur, so that I know that the fur is moving a certain way in this area, the fur is moving in another direction in the other area. It just makes it easier when you actually get to that point, when you're trying to get as much detail and as much accuracy as possible. And this is it here, all sketched up and ready to start drawing. And these are the tools and materials I'm going to be using. I have a kneaded eraser, a small paintbrush that helps with shading, Tombow mono eraser, that's just a very fine point eraser, and then a Derwent electric eraser that helps remove more material if I have to. And then one of my favorite pencils that I've been using for many years is the Wolf's carbon pencils. I have from B to 6B I'm going to be using, and then some of my new favorites are the Faber-Castell charcoal pencils, which just really are dark, which I really like. And I also use their compressed charcoal blocks as well. And then I have my hand protection that I use. It's just a piece of parchment paper with tape, painter's tape stuck to it. That just helps prevent smudging and getting your hand oils all over the paper. And then, but yeah, just helps keep things clean and keep things from smudging all over the place. And I also realized that my secondary camera was a little bit out of focus, or maybe it was just too far from the piece, so it's a little bit blurry, which you'll see later on more. So sorry about that, I'll fix that in the next part. I didn't realize it until I started editing, so just bear with me. So now I'm just starting to add the actual details and starting to fill in. So what I do is I mostly just do a rough fill in. I'll outline. This is going to be an all black background, so I kind of outline everything in black, make it nice and thick, and then I start to actually fill in all of the main drawing area. And I also thought I would answer a few of the questions that I got on the last video, specifically about what paper I use. So this one is a matte drawing paper. I actually get this from Michael's craft store, from their framing department. I go in and I just ask for a sheet of their acid-free cotton matte board, and they have different kinds. This was the one that I chose. It's Bainbridge cotton paper. Its reference number is 12005. But honestly, you can use whatever kind of paper you want. I also really like the Strathmore 400 series paper. When I do my indenting technique, I usually use the 4-ply, I believe it's Bristol paper, not the Velum, definitely not the Velum. That one's almost plasticky, it's way too smooth. But honestly, you just have to use a paper that you like and that's accessible to you. Or like now, I use a lot of matte boards just for the size, because I can get them in 40 inches up to 60 inches. So that's why I use this paper a lot of the time. But what I used to do and what I still do is I'll go to a store, an art store, one that's local to me, and then I go and then I feel the paper. I actually touch it. I feel how smooth it is. I feel if I like the texture. I see how thick it is, depending on if I'm gonna do an indenting piece or if it's just gonna be just pure pencil. Will determine whether I get it or not, depending on how thick it is. So that's kind of what I recommend doing, just making sure it's acid free, just so it doesn't yellow over time. And that's it. It's just about what you can find and what works, because everybody uses different paper. There's probably a bunch of artists on YouTube that don't use my paper. I've never heard of their paper that they prefer. So, or it might be some fancy paper that is hard to find. So I don't know, it just get what you can get, and as long as you like it and you feel like it works, then that's what you should do. But overall, Strathmore is pretty accessible and you can find it almost everywhere. I also have bought that from Michael's craft store before and some other local art stores, so when in doubt, you can probably find that somewhere. Also, I was thinking it probably works well if I answer questions in the video. So any questions that you guys have, put it in the comments and I'll answer them in my next video. I'll just kind of include a Q&A as the drawing progresses, because I don't know if I can talk and just talk over my drawings forever. So giving me some different questions that I can answer would definitely be good, and it'll help you guys out as well. Okay, and back to the drawing. There's these two little stones. I didn't actually have those in my reference picture. I just felt like the drawing was a little bit unbalanced and needed a little bit of small foreground pieces to kind of balance it out a little bit more. So I just decided to draw those in and just kind of eyeball it. So what I normally do is I'll add in a few of the main details with the pencil. So if I know there's different ridge lines that are dark or different shadows, I'll use my one of my darker pencils, fill those in, and then I'll use my paintbrush, and I have a bunch of charcoal powder that I've been collecting from previous drawings, and I use that and I just kind of brush it in a little bit, and to darken it, it leaves a really nice smooth finish, and it doesn't leave little pencil marks, and it just covers a lot of area really fast. But something really important too is you really don't want to rush these things. You can't rush these detailed drawings. I mean, believe it or not, but just on these little rocks, I probably spent about an hour and a half just working on these two little rocks. So when you look at the whole picture, I mean, it's easily going to be a 40-50 hour piece just to do this. So you really have to be committed to it taking time, and you need to have patience, because otherwise it just won't turn out. If you rush things, you get a rushed finish and it just looks rushed. It doesn't look proper. It doesn't look like you really spent the time to get it done properly. Now, mind you, that's just for this type of artwork. You can do, spend as much time as you want doing whatever kind of artwork you want. And, if you're really fast at doing artwork like this, then that's great. This is just my experience of it. It's just that it does take time, and you can't rush time. If you want it to look like the way you imagine it to look, it tends to take even more time than you think. Patience is key. So basically, right now I'm just layering and then erasing a little bit, adding some fine white crack lines and texture lines, going back and forth between the paintbrush, my eraser, my two different erasers, and also I use Q-tips as well. That helps with like small little areas to get either a little bit darker and kind of smudge it all in and make it nice and smooth. But that's basically all I'm doing here, is just layering, adding finer details on top, and then also depending on where the focal point is, or the focus point, it might be more in focus or out of focus. So like these two rocks, the rock from behind is a little bit out of focus because it's past the main focal point, and then the rock in front is just a little bit out of focus because it's a little bit too close. So they're gonna have details, but they're not going to be extremely sharp details. So with that, you can kind of soften them up with the paintbrush or with the kneaded eraser, just to kind of bring back, some of that sharp detail and make it a little bit softer. So with, a lot of these realism drawings, I mean, even the owl that I did maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, the one with the black background, the beak is out of focus of that one. It's right in the middle of the picture, but the beak is completely out of focus, but the eyes are in focus, because when it comes to animals, you always want to have the eyes in focus. It's the soul of the drawing, so to speak. It's where all of your attention goes when you look at an animal, especially with big eyes, that's looking right at you. So, but having that depth, that sense of depth in a picture, it just brings out an extra layer of realism as well. It just makes it more realistic. So understanding depth and where your main focal point is. Also, like for this one, working with like the rule of thirds, that your eye finds it more appealing if something is either the bottom third or 1/3 of the way horizontally, or whether it's the top third, instead of having it centered right in the middle. Now you can have stuff centered right in the middle. I mean, I've had plenty of pieces where you want it centered in the middle. It just kind of depends on what you're going for, but it's just something to play around with, and something that I'm still learning as well. I'm by no means a professional or an art teacher. I don't know all the terminology. I just kind of know what looks good to me, and that's what I do. But I might not be able to explain it as well as somebody who's actually studied art and knows all of the the processes and all the terms and everything like that. And then so back to this part of the drawing. Here, this center rock is a lot more in focus, as you can see. So I'm trying to do more sharp detail, to bring out more of the texture, bringing out more shadows, and just trying to bring out all the fine lines, whether that's dark fine lines or light fine lines, just really trying to bring them out. And you can see it really well with the next rock that I do as well. It really kind of pulls the picture together, which I like. But if anybody's still watching, you guys are troopers, because man, I can't listen to myself talk for 18 minutes. I can barely stand listening to myself while editing this video. So if you're still here, I give a thumbs up to you. I don't really know what else to say at this point, so I think I'm just gonna let the video play a little bit, and I'll come back a little bit more towards the end. Hello, 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 hello. Is anybody there? There. It's a bit of a long video, so I hope you guys like that. That's what I got a lot of comments. You guys wanted a long video with some real-time drawing and just slower, sped up stuff so that you can see a little bit more of what I'm doing. So I hope you guys like it. Here you can see I've got most of that bigger rock finished up, and it's really starting to come together. I have this now other rock more at the foreground, which is also out of focus, so you can see the difference in perspective with, you know, the foreground being out of focus and then the midground being in focus, and just seeing that different sense of depth, which is nice. I'm still not too sure what I'm gonna do for the full-on foreground, if I'm gonna add texture or darken it out or just make it kind of like a darker ground. I'm thinking more just kind of like the darkish ground that's already there. Not too sure yet, but I think as the picture goes on, I'll have more idea of what I want to do. Originally I had put grass, but I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. I don't really like the look of it anymore, so I don't know. I'll probably just keep it nice and flat. Yeah, so we're coming up on the end of the video. Just thanks for watching for anybody who's still here, and let me know what you guys want to see in the next part. If you have any questions, you know, put them down in the comment section. I'll talk about them in the next video. Yeah, thanks, and see you at the next part.